So Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump back on the campaign trail today. The first time since Tuesday night's debate in Philadelphia. Trump is now rallying supporters tonight in Tucson, Arizona. And as we just learned, a judge has now dismissed 2 criminal counts against Trump in the Georgia election interference case. Meanwhile, Trump has also ruled out today participating in another debate against the vice president. Harris made a stop this afternoon in the battleground state of North Carolina, where she is neck and neck in the race with Trump in the Tar Heel state. Harris is working there to build on the debate and what many of her allies perceive as a win. She'll be holding a rally in Charlotte this afternoon and in Greensboro, North Carolina this evening. But we start with some of that breaking news on former President Trump. Nikole Killion, our colleague, is on Capitol Hill. Nikole, what are you learning about the Georgia case and the criminal charges against Trump?
Well, what we have learned is that 2 of those charges, as you mentioned, have been dropped, and this comes just a couple of months after that same judge, Judge Scott McAfee, also dismissed 3 other counts against the former president. So rather than facing 13 counts in this 41-count indictment, that's now down to 8. Now, these counts are around the issue of filing false documents related to the so-called false elector scheme, a meeting of these alleged false electors in Georgia back in December of 2020. It's important to note that part of the reason why these charges were dropped was because some other defendants in the case who were also allegedly involved in this false elector scheme, John Eastman and Sean Steele, a state senator, that they are the ones who kind of requested that the judge take another look at these charges. So the charges against them also dropped as well. But this is significant in the sense that we did hear from the former president's attorney who said that he has prevailed again. That is Stephen Sadow, who represents the former president in this Georgia case. And, this comes at a time, though, where this case has essentially been frozen. It's been on ice because, as you know, earlier this year, there was a motion to potentially disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis from this case. That process played out at the beginning of the year, that complaint coming from yet another defendant in this case. We know that same judge, Scott McAfee, allowed Fani Willis to stay on the case so long as Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade stepped down, which he did. But then that entire process and his decision was appealed. So we are now waiting for this appellate court hearing, which will now take place at the end of the year to again determine whether or not the district attorney should stay on this case. So consequently, in spite of these charges being dropped today, there is still really virtually no movement in this case, and there can't be until this issue of whether or not Fani Willis should stay on the case is decided, which, again, that hearing will take place at the end of this year. Fani Willis, for her part, and her office is declining comment, but they are reviewing this latest ruling from Judge McAfee, so we'll see if they take any action down the road.
Some movement down in Georgia. Nikole Killion, thank you.
You bet.
Now let's go to our colleague Caitlyn Huey-Burns, who is in Arizona traveling with Trump, and Nancy Cordes, our chief White House correspondent in North Carolina with Vice President Kamala Harris. Great to see both of you. Thanks for joining us from the campaign trail. Nancy, we'll start with you. The Harris campaign looks at this debate as something that's really given them a bounce. So how are they now approaching this new state of the campaign, this next chapter?
Hey, Robert, good to be with you. Yeah, they're saying that they are embarking now on what they're calling an aggressive new phase. Aggressive in the sense that she is going to pick up the pace when it comes to her campaign events, pick up the pace when it comes to interviews with local reporters in battleground states, and release a slew of new ads with clips from that debate, which they viewed as a win. They are also announcing that since the debate took place on Tuesday night, they have raised another $47 million. And in the rally that she just held here in Charlotte, North Carolina, the first of 2 here in North Carolina today, Bob, she laid down the gauntlet and challenged Donald Trump to do yet another debate. Take a listen to that.
I believe we owe it to the voters to have another debate. Because this election and what is at stake could not be more important.
Now, what she may or may not have known when she said that was just that a few minutes earlier, former President Trump had closed the door on the possibility of another debate, posting on Truth Social that he's not going to do it, that he thinks that he won the debate on Tuesday night and that he doesn't feel the need to engage in another one. So that's where things stand right now, Bob. But they could always change. Trump has gone back and forth a lot, as you know, on this topic of whether to do another debate.
And Nancy, just stick with us for a moment. I know you're busy on the trail. North Carolina, such a battleground. Is the Harris campaign optimistic?
They know that it's an uphill battle. It is the one battleground state that Joe Biden did not win in 2020, but they're feeling bullish. I mean, the state does have a Democratic governor, so a Democrat can win here statewide, and they feel that the Republican who is running for governor now is not that strong. So they feel that Democrats have an opening, therefore Kamala Harris has an opening. They're opening new campaign offices all the time, particularly in rural parts of the state where they feel that they can, you know, if not outright win, just boost their numbers a little bit in a way that might help them get over the top statewide. And then, you know, the part of the plan, as we have discussed, is just to keep coming back to this state and the other battleground states again and again and again. Just show her face, press the flesh, and hope that that's enough to get her over the top.
Caitlyn, you're in Arizona covering former President Trump. That's the Sun Belt. Is there a focus on immigration there today, and why is he going back?
Yeah, Bob, good to see you. Well, remember, Arizona was decided by just under 11,000 votes. So this is a key battleground state that Trump lost by that slim margin last time around. And they're really hoping to shore it up this time around, given that the race has really tightened in some of these other key battlegrounds. He's been here about 4 times since this start of this election cycle. And he's been here twice in the past month. I was with him about a couple of weeks ago when he visited the southern border. Every time he comes to Arizona, immigration is top of mind for him, as it is for voters as well here. We are in Tucson, which is just about an hour from the southern border. And most voters that we talked to standing in line at the Trump rally earlier today said immigration is top of mind for them. Listen to what one voter told us just earlier.
I support legal immigration. I think like most of these people probably do, but seeing the illegal immigration problem to the numbers that it's reached, I think we're handcuffed with this administration. I don't think they allow them to do the jobs that they're supposed to do. And I mean, millions of immigrants have come through, and that's concerning.
And she had mentioned that she is a second-generation American, and so this issue is personal for her. But Bob, another item that Trump is going to focus on here in Arizona is the economy, but underneath that, the cost of housing. That is something that we hear a lot from voters on the trail, and it's something that actually has shown up in our polling as well. A poll that we had in Arizona, CBS News, a few months ago showed that a vast majority of voters here believe that it is more difficult for them to buy a house now than it was for their parents' generation. So I don't know if you can see on the signs behind me, that is an issue that they're going to talk about, as well as no tax on tips, another policy that the former president has been championing here. But as you mentioned, the debate about debates is also hovering over this, with some voters here acknowledging to us that, in their view, Trump didn't have the kind of debate they wanted him to have, his supporters did, but they also kind of echoed the rhetoric coming from the campaign, which was to blame the moderators and the media for that performance.
And a quick follow-up, Caitlyn. The former president says he's now not doing a further debate, another debate with the vice president. What are you learning about that decision?
Well, Bob, as you mentioned, he is saying that on Truth Social. His team yesterday said that they had still wanted to do this September 25th debate that they had proposed. The Kamala Harris campaign had said they want to do another debate, and you heard Nancy talk about Harris continuing that message today. So whether this does change, whether he changes his mind, remains to be seen. That can always be an open question. But it is a acknowledgement that this was something kind of hovering over, and it does raise questions about, whether the what the evaluation is of Trump's performance among his own supporters. You've had some critics within the Republican Party criticizing him for taking the bait that Kamala Harris laid out for him and not pressing the case against her that his advisors had wanted him to, instead of going off on tangents and other things that have now kind of come to the forefront. They were hoping that he would focus on the policy differences, and that's what we hear from voters on the ground here. They're very reluctant, those supporting him are very reluctant to issue any criticisms of him, but you can hear them kind of subtly that they want him to just stay on message, get through these next 7 weeks or so, and kind of close the deal in the campaign's words.
Nancy Cordes and Caitlin Huey-Burns, appreciate your reporting. Good luck on the campaign trail.